In this video, we'll be testing the REI Trail Hut 2-person tent for its ease of setup, spaciousness, rain protection, comfort, and more. Out of the box, this is what I got. The carry bag, the rainfly with pre-attached guidelines, the tent body with a pre-attached footprint, poles in this bag and stakes in this other bag. Inside the bags, you'll get 2 long poles, 1 short pole, a pole repair splint on the short pole, and 6 stakes. Briefly, here's how to set up the REI tent. First, lay the tent body on the ground, then crisscross the 2 long poles over each other, and each end of the poles is to be secured in the 4 corner grommets. Then secure the 13 pole clips. These clip the body onto the poles, and there are no pole sleeves at all. The short pole is to go on top of the long poles, and there are 2 extra grommets above the tent doors for securing this. After that, drape the rainfly over the tent, with the vestibule zips over the tent doors, and it secures easily with the easy clip rainfly buckles at the 4 corners. Then stake the entire tent down and guy out the pre-attached guidelines. One thing though, only 6 stakes were provided, but I needed 10, so remember to pack 4 extra ones. Altogether, the entire setup takes slightly less than 7 minutes. Taking down the trail hut is just the opposite of the setup, and it took me about the same time to pack the whole thing away, so about 6 minutes and 45 seconds. Everything compacted down nicely without too much effort, and the carry bag wasn't too much of a tight fit. For more details, I have a separate video with loads of instructions and tips to help you set up your tent more easily. The REI Trail Hut comes with a pre-attached footprint, but you can remove it if you want to. Reattaching it is a little bit more confusing, but here's the exact steps. First, grab the toggle on the footprint and loop it through the opening in the webbing of the tent body. Then double back and loop the toggle back through the opening in the strap of the footprint. When you properly reattach it, you should see this like triangle shape here, and just do this for all 4 corners. The peak height in the Trail Hut 2 comes in at about 38 inches. On top of that, I also noticed that the extreme right and left widths of the tent also came in at about 38 inches. This means you get the peak height throughout the entire width of the tent. Thanks to the short pole that goes on top of the 2 long poles, this picks the tent body up to give you way more livable space inside. The ends of the short pole give you like vertical walls on both lengths, which is really nice. From the outside of the tent with the rainfly, here's exactly what it looks like, and you can see how the pole props the entire tent body up. Now my height is only about 5'3", so this peak height was more than enough for me. Here's what the peak height looks like with a 4-inch sleeping pad in the tent, and here's a 6-inch queen bed. Overall, more than enough space for me. For the base area, I first measured the length of the trail hut, and that comes in at about 86 inches. Then I measured the width, and that comes in at about 49 inches. Overall, that's a total base area of about 29.3 square feet. Now that we know the total area, what's the pad sizing like? Here's my Exped Megamet Duo 10, which is the size of 2 regular pads put together. It fit quite nicely, with a bit of leftover space for storing gear on the floor. 2 regular pads, no problem at all, but the extra width left is only about 6 inches there. If you want to fit wider, like 25-inch pads, it'll be a very snug fit all the way to the edges of the tent. Now, when I tried to inflate an almost queen-size bed, I noticed that the width was way too short for that, and it filled up the whole tent without even being fully inflated, and it quite obviously bulges out the front of the tent as well, so not a good fit for sure. 2 extra wide 30-inch pads will be larger than this, so obviously not gonna fit as well. The Trail Hut 2 comes with 2 vestibules, 1 at each length of the tent. I measured the width of each vestibule, and that came in at about 29 inches. So on top of the base area from before, this gives us an extra 8.7 square feet for each vestibule, or a total of 17.3 square feet for both vestibules. Each vestibule comes with 2 red straps, 1 on each side. You can use either side to stake the vestibule down. This allows you to keep either the right or the left panel open, but only the left strap is adjustable, the other one isn't. Now, if you don't need the vestibule at all, you can unstake it completely and tie the whole thing up, because there are these 2 toggles here by the side. And here's something that most tents don't have. There's an extra 2 toggle loops a little bit further up. That's because the vestibule zips extend not just up the side of the rainfly like most tents, but they even go all the way to the top too. This allows you to pull back the vestibule even more using these extra loops. This is perfect for more ventilation and even looking at views while still having the rainfly on at the same time. Under each vestibule, you find 1 door each, so 2 doors altogether. And when you open both doors, the cross ventilation makes it so much more comfy. The size of the doors are decently big too, measuring about 40 by almost 31 inches each. To keep the doors open, there's a toggle by the side to hold the door fabric out of the way. Each door has 2 zippers. I couldn't find any branding on them, so they're like no-name zippers, but even so, I found that the zipping experience was pretty good, with no snags at all for me. Same with the vestibule. Each vestibule has 2 zippers, no branding on them too, but the zipping experience is good with no snags at all as well. For storage, there are 2 pockets in the tent. They're at opposite ends of the tent, so each of them is easily accessible from each door. Each pocket measures about 16 by 6.5 inches, so decently big. There's also a total of 7 loops in the tent. They're all like felt loops. They're all the same across the tent, and this gave me lots of space for hanging lanterns and fans up. It would be nice if a gear loft were provided to make use of all these loops too, but there isn't one. As for seam taping, the corner seams here are taped, and the seam going up vertically is taped for a little bit too. There's also a seam running across the floor, and it's taped too. Basically, all the seams on the gray flooring fabric are all taped, while everything else above that isn't taped. As for rainfly, all the seams were also taped perfectly. The Trail Hut also has a tub floor that runs all around the entire tent with the minimal seams on it, except for the corners and the seam down the middle. The tub floor comes up to about 7 inches for the width of the tent and about 6 inches for the length of the tent. Moving on to rainfly protection, this is a full coverage rainfly extending almost all the way down to the ground for max rain protection, with only a small gap at the bottom for some ventilation. What I didn't like about this rainfly though is that it cannot be pulled away at the width of the tent, only at the length. As for vents, there are 2 of these, one on each side of the tent. The vent zipper is actually the extended vestibule zipper that I talked about before. Simply unzip the top of the vestibule zipper, then use the kickstand to hold the rainfly up, and voila, you get yourself a vent here. Now, here's what it looks like from the inside of the tent. Now that we've explored most of the waterproofing features, let's get into the rain test. First, I put the Trail Hut through about 2 hours of light to moderate rain, and it held up perfectly fine with no leaks at all. So next, I put it through a heavy rain test. After the heavy rain stopped, I checked in on the tent, and here are the results. After 1 hour of heavy rain, there was not a single drop of water inside the tent at all. I checked all the seams, especially those in the corners, and there was no leaking at all. As for the vents, I left one of them open in the heavy rain, and it didn't leak at all. As for the other opposite vent, unfortunately at the right angle during horizontal rain, the rain can definitely get into the tent. However, thankfully we can open and close them from the inside of the tent so no water will get in. Next, I also lifted the rain fly to check on the tub floor, and I noticed that the water didn't go beyond the tub floor, so it's a great length to keep you dry on the inside. Now, if you remove the rain fly on hot days, you'd find that there's actually not a lot of mesh in the tent body. I would say this is about 40% mesh and about 60% fabric. There's quite a bit of mesh up top though, so you can stargaze or look at views at night. As for materials, the flooring is made of 66D polyester taffeta, along with a footprint underneath, same materials, and this is great for durability, while the rain fly and the tent body are made of 66D and 68D polyester taffeta respectively. The poles are made of aluminum, they're 8.5 millimeters thick, and the nylon mesh is also micro mesh, the holes of which were able to keep out every single bug for me. The guy out points have reflective strips on them, the guy lines are regular shock cord with an easy to use tensioner, and the stakes are your regular thin shepherd hook stakes. For portability, the 2-person REI Trail Hut has a pack size of 21 by 8.5 by 7 inches. If you're packing the poles separate from the rest of the tent body, the pack length of the poles is about 17 inches. The carry bag has a handle by the side, and the whole pack tent weighs about 5.7 pounds. If you don't take the footprint with you, the total weight will be about 7 ounces less, and here's the breakdown of all the parts of the tent. For pros, I thought the Trail Hut was really good value for money, especially since I bought it for like 30% off during one of REI's sales. It even comes with a pre-attached footprint, and if you don't need to shave any weight off, you can just leave it as it is, and this doesn't take any extra time to set up at all. If it wasn't pre-attached via these toggles here, it would add 30 to 60 seconds to the setup and the pack away. However, because of the lack of grommets on the footprint, this isn't the type of tent that allows for a footprint and rainfly only setup. I don't need to shave any weight off though, so this isn't a problem for me. I also thought the vestibules were interesting, and I loved how they could be pulled back further than actually most other tents. Most tents can be pulled back this much, but the Trail Hut allows you to pull it back even further, rolling up even over the roof so you can still stargaze even with the rainfly on. There are quite a few benefits to this. First, this increases ventilation in the tent, and second, the rainfly doesn't droop over the doorway like other tents, making it easier to get in and out of the tent. And of course, I also like the 2 doors for more cross ventilation and the 2 vestibules on top of the 2 doors for more base area. The ridge pole also really helped increase livable space inside the tent, and although the peak height wasn't the highest I've seen, it felt decently roomy. The waterproofing is also pretty good. The Trail Hut went through hours of light, moderate, and heavy rain with no leaks at all, but here's where we get into the cons. I think the biggest con of this tent is that the rainfly cannot be pulled away from the widths of the tent. Being able to pull it away helps with better rain protection and also with better ventilation. It's a very simple feature to have, so I'm surprised this tent can't do that. The rest of the cons are kind of minor, like there was not a lot of mesh for summer use. I think this is more of an off-season 3+ season tent instead. Also, the base area inside the tent is a whole 2 square feet smaller than expected, and the peak height is 2 inches shorter than expected. So just take note of this if the dimensions are important to you. Overall though, the number of pros outweighed the number of cons. Most of the cons are pretty minor too, except for the first one. So if you can grab this tent during one of REI's sales, I think it's super well worth the money, and I'd highly recommend it. I know this because I tested the Trail Hut against other similar tents. Check out this video on the screen to see how it went. I'll put it up when it's ready. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in that one.